Mayan ruin that has finally come to the surface. This is incredible. And so many people to thank, including we want to thank ODOT for helping us and a lot of other private individuals for bringing this back to life, this piece of the canal. We have a lot of folks here today, and I hope you've had a chance to see the handouts and the pictures and things, because there's been a lot of effort in order to try to educate everybody a little bit about what's going on here today. We have, today we were happy to have all three of our county commissioners, Brian Davis, Kathy Coleman, Scott Powell. Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you, right over there. Washington Township Trustee Scott Bauer, he's here with us today. Hello. Ohio Department of Transportation Dan Frazee, a state administrator also. We're blessed with having him here today. The gentleman that kind of started this whole vision, Clyde Willis, of course, our county engineer is back there. Clyde, again, we remember those days where we all got together and had a crazy dream. And look where we are now today. And thank you, Clyde, for that, Clyde and Sandy. Also, some other great inspiration to us all, Kathy Nelson and Jane Shaw right here, and they're from the, let's hear for them. Yeah, give them a round of applause. Big round of applause. Standing ovation. They're with the Ohio Erie Southern Descent Canal Trail. They were kind of the first that came to tell us that we had something special here, something very special, and we indeed got educated from them, and without their help, again, we would not be here today. Let's see. With all that said, I hope I didn't forget anybody here of note, and everybody here is famous in their own way, because again, it's your passion and love for history is the reason that we're here. But I got to bring up the guy that's, gosh, I'll tell you what, you talk about an inspiration to us. He's been the president of our byway committee for, I'm going to say, the last 7 or 8 years. And I don't know what we do without him, because he is so integral to all of us. And ladies and gentlemen, can I bring up our president, Bill Tipton? Bill Tipton.
Did he say inspiration or perspiration? People always say the nicest things about you in a crowd like this. Don't they thank you? You did a great job. Being something less than tall, I had to lower this down. Well, thank y'all for coming. I really didn't order this weather, but whoever did, thank you, because it's just absolutely perfect. I thought maybe the first thing I'd say is just a little bit about the Scenic Soda Heritage Trail. The Scenic Soda Heritage Trail got started about 2008. It was actually the dream of Clyde Willis standing back there. And the way I understand the story, that Clyde and his wife had taken a little trip down into Tennessee and maybe went around Cades Cove and saw how pretty everything was down there, and they thought, hey, we got all that back home. So when he got back with this dream in mind, and then he got Debbie Lange, one of our committee members, involved, and they turned that dream into a reality. So that's really where it all got started. And what we do, you can see our little banner right there, and it says that our motto is the preserving and promoting the rich history and natural beauty of Scioto County, and we have a lot of it. So what our committee has done is developed some driving trails around the trail itself. We have put out our little interpretive signs at our points of interest to tell a little bit about that site when you go there to visit. It turns out that we had a lot more places that we thought were important historically and then just natural beauty, that we didn't stay right on the trail itself. And actually where we are right here today is not on the Scenic Soda Heritage Trail, but it's definitely one of our points of interest. So that's enough about us. Just some little housekeeping things here to get started. You probably noticed over there in the corner, we got one of Mott's Pot. Remember their company logo, nobody sticks their nose in our business. Several of the pictures that you see on the tables around here are actually on loan to us from the Southern Ohio Museum. They were part of the Carl Ackerman pictures, and they actually have all those there, and they're in the process of digitizing them where they can make them more readily available to the public. So a big thanks to the Southern Ohio Museum. And to show our thanks, we've got a little can back here on the back table where you can put some of those monetary thank yous in there, you know. How was it they used to say on WLW, Reverend, what was his name?
Deuteronomus Skaggs.
Deuteronomus Skaggs. He said, reach down in those jeans and pull out those greens, the salad of salvation. Thanks to the Quick Stop over here for allowing us to invade their property and park. And also right across the road here, Lisa Dials, her little custom shirt logo business. She allowed us to kind of take that over today. A lot of the things that we have laid out here today, we have to give credit to one of our good friends in this canal society, and that's David Meyer. David Meyer's not here, but he is undoubtedly the most knowledgeable person in the state of Ohio when it comes to the canal system. So a lot of the things that we're going to share with you here today are actually from him, and I just wanted to be sure that I mentioned his name. As far as actually getting the pictures done themselves, the copycat over there in Portsmouth has just been wonderful to work for. They spent a lot more time and effort than what they got paid for to make this all available for us, so a little shout out to them too. Our Scenic Byway Committee makes a Christmas ornament every year, and the year before last, our ornament was the Union Mills Confectionery and Lock 50. We have a few of those back here on the table where Paul Sheets is setting. And we also have some of our DVDs that tells the story of the trail. If you're interested in those, they're back there and they're for sale. We also have a table set up back there where we have one of our local authors, Becca Andre. We know her better as Becky Joe. But she's seated there with her series of books on a story about change, and that would be the railroad as it came into existence here and what that meant to the people who worked on the Ohio Erie Canal. And she also threw in a little romance for you folks who like that. So anyway, we're going to raffle a set of 5 books off to tell that story, and the proceeds will go to the Scenic Byway Committee. And then also seated back there is my wife, Marcia Tipton. Those 2 quilts that you see hanging back there are her creations. Marcia had me look through about 50 quilts before I picked out the ones that she said was appropriate. Women. You know, women get treated different even when they go to heaven. The women get to walk right in the pearly gates. But us men, we have to line up outside in 2 different lines. And the one line is for the men who claim that they were the boss here on earth. And then the other line is for the men that claim that we were the boss here on earth. So the one line, as you might think, the line of the people who the husbands claimed that that the wife was the boss, that line just stretched out as far as you could see. And the other line where the man claimed that he was the boss, there was just one little gray-headed man standing there. And St. Peter walked over to him. He said, "Why are you standing over here all by yourself?" And he said, "I don't know. This is where my wife told me to stand." So anyway, Marcia and I couldn't quite decide, so you got 2 quilts back there, and if you win the raffle, you can take your choice of either one. Now, to shift gears a little bit, if you can, imagine that we're here about 1850, and I would have to be talking very loud if you were to hear me here. There would be hundreds of workers going and coming. There was stone being quarried and delivered, timber being sawed and delivered. Union Mills' big water wheel would be turning and grinding corn and wheat and making flour. Produce of all kinds was being delivered. Distillery in full production. Distilleries, you see the picture here. Larry's going to give you a lot more local history when I get done yapping. But the distillery set right up here, and I've read that statistic over and over, and it's really hard to believe, but they said that they had the capability of daily turning out 105 barrels of whiskey. Wow. So anyway, that was all going on. There were cattle yards over here. There was yards set up for hogs, and they were probably being processed here. The road over here was lined with stores, and customers of all kinds was here buying things. We had a post office. There was horses and buggies back and forth. There was wagons being loaded and unloaded. This was a very busy place. And you may be wondering why. Why was there so much going on right here? Well, folks, it's because what you see right over the bank, the Ohio Erie Canal. This was the end, or nearly the end, of a 308-mile trip for some people and products. And today what we want to do is we want to celebrate and share what the Ohio Erie Canal Lock 50 meant to this community. And I got to say that I'm standing up here and I'm looking at Mr. Temple. If it wasn't for Mr. Temple and his daughters, Charity, and I don't see Debbie.
Right here.
Oh, hi, Debbie. Yeah, I looked right past you. Looked right past you. But if it wasn't for their involvement and their love of history and wanting to save this old lock, it would be gone. So a big shout out to you guys. Thanks a lot for making this possible, for saving it for us. The history of this community would probably have been lost forever. And history is a very fragile thing. It has to be protected every day. It only takes one bad piece of legislation or one bad or not fully thought out decision or just simple neglect to cause history to be lost forever. So I'd like for us to kind of make a pledge here today that let's not let it happen here. Let's do everything that we can to try to save this piece of history for all the generations to come. I think that's about all I was going to say right now. What's next on our list, Steve? You going to? Let me turn it back over to Steve Hayes, and he's going to introduce some folks.
All right.
Well, that's our president, Bill. Get a round of applause, because this guy works and works, and I'm telling you what, he's an inspiration to all of us who want to know more about our local heritage here in Sauter County. And when we started this, we were dumbfounded with everything we found, because we've got some great people on this committee.
Let me say something,
Yep.
if I can, because you always give me all these big accolades, which really I don't deserve. It's the committee that does all the work. But I remember one time that one of my son-in-laws was Todd Cook, and my girls was bragging on me what all I could do, and he listened to that and listened to that, and he finally said, "Did he get any mud on his cape?"
Well, we can go down and get you some mud right down there. That's good. But a committee such as ours is a very special one, and we started, again, I'm guessing 13 years ago, Clyde, when we all got together and on all this. But along with our great crew, we got Paul Sheets, and Paul, there he is back there. Also, we have Larry Mullins, LD, the man that never sleeps. He's our emergency director with everything in the world, and including takes a lot of time to help us out too here. Debbie Lange. Debbie has been the glob of glue that's kind of held us together here for the last years since day one, actually, as far as making sure that we all behave. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. But Dr. John Lucas, I'll tell you, this man back here, everybody should be fortunate enough to have a man that watches your money the way John does. And he does. And we spend it prudently, too. Also, CB Herman, he's our insurance man and a big lover of history. CB, where are you? Okay. CB, of course, always makes sure that we follow the rules when it comes to a lot of things that we have to do in this organization. Also, a guy I had on my show this morning, Corki Walker. Corki, he is the man, the myth, the legend, and he knows West Side inside and out. Also, Marcia Phillips is our secretary. Marcia, He's back there, and of course, Marcia makes sure that everything in the meetings that we do discuss are recorded to its absolute accuracy, and we thank her for that. And it's always nice to have a judge in the house. Judge Steve Mowry right over here. He always makes sure that the decorum is followed and that we always behave ourselves, because we would never want to do anything bad, because he knows the bad people. And but he is a great guy, and again, I'll tell you what, he's been a rock with us in this organization. So as you can tell, we have just a bunch of different folks, and it all fits together so perfectly. And we're just fortunate enough to have this committee. And at this note, I want to bring up LD, Larry Mullins. We know him, and he's another great historian. And I'll tell you what, he has done a lot of digging and back into the archives. And if you want to know anything, ask Larry.
If I don't know, I'll make it up. That's what historians do, right? I want to move this along a little bit. There is a lot of history here in this area, and we know it as West Portsmouth now, but it's not always been West Portsmouth. In fact, when the first settlers came to the area, they first referred to this area as Old Town, and the reason for that is because they had noticed that there had been a settlement of Native Americans here. They had grown corn and they had lived here for many years. So going way back to the early 1800s, the old timers referred to this as Old Town. Now, there's still a remnant of that. As you go on up Galena Pike here, you have the Old Town Methodist Church. So you ever wonder where they got that name? So then as the canal was built in the 1830s, in 1834, the grist mill went in, and it was called Union Mills. And of course, the canal started operating, and then people started referring to this area as Union Mills because that was the main industry here. Then along, as the distillery is built in the 1850s by George Davis and his company, a lot of people referred to this area as Unionville, to kind of play off of the Union Mills. And a lot of these names they weren't official. They were just, names that people called them, and sometimes they overlapped. Well, about 1890, a guy by the name of C.H. Neil Barbie bought the store, the general store, off of Mr. Davis, and it actually set where the gas station is now. And so he became the collector of fares for the canal. He also operated a post office and ran the store. Well, Mr. Barbie had a daughter, Bertha, who had died at an early age. And so when he named the post office, it was known as Bertha Post Office. So a lot of folks started referring to this area as Bertha. And if you kind of go straight across, you're just about straight across from Bertha Avenue. So I always wonder why Bertha, but anyway, so for many years it was known as Bertha to a lot of folks, but also people still referred to it as Union Mills, some of the older folks. And then along about 1900, people started referring to this area as Nauvoo, and there's some speculation of why. There is some speculation that some of the folks that were Mormons that had settled in this area basically had that name because in 1839 they bought a town in Illinois and actually renamed it Nauvoo and built a beautiful temple in 1840, which is still there today, and it was called Nauvoo, which roughly translated is a Hebrew word that means beautiful city or beautiful place. So a lot of folks started referring to this as Nauvoo, and if you think about it, we've got Nauvoo Run over here, the creek. We've got Nauvoo Church, and back in the day we had Nauvoo School. I always wonder where they came up with Nauvoo. So that's one theory. It may not be completely true, but hey, it's the best one going right now. So, but then things really got complicated as people were referring to as Union Mills or Bertha or some people Nauvoo. But in the early 1960s, when the post office came through and basically established the zip code, West Portsmouth was established, and that's when people started referring to it as West Portsmouth. Now, some of the old timers would still call it Nauvoo and things like that. But when it got its own zip code, 45663, that was kind of officially a name that stuck. Now we call it West Portsmouth. But anyway, this area, the people that were here, George Davis especially, Mr. Barbie, a lot of the names you hear, like Stout, helped build the canal, Coles, a lot of these people, we basically owe them a debt of gratitude for what they did back in the day of getting things started and gave us a platform to build on. And I think it's just appropriate that we always remember who they were and what they did, and try to honor their tradition by saving some of the history. Now the store over here, actually the building survived almost 150 years. It basically changed hands after the Barbies sold it to some Smiths. Smiths ran it up into the 40s. When they passed away, it was sold at state auction. And then some folks, the Throckmortons, that had for years the kitchen cabinet store there, big supporters of the canal. If you'd ever been into their store, you saw like all the pictures and displays they had. They were really supporters of the canal and the Canal Society and those folks. And they operated a very successful business. But in I believe it was 86, 87, the building was sold to the company that built the gas station. So that structure had been around for 150 years. It had burnt, parts of it had burnt down. It had been through every major flood, going all the way back, 1884, the 1913 flood, the 37 flood. But unfortunately it's gone now, but it's too bad we couldn't have held on to that building. So let's always remember history, because that's what we're made of. See?
All right, we've got, we're going to be here for a while to give everybody a chance to look at some of our displays. We're going to do some questions, and we're going to do some, if you like, anybody has any questions whatsoever, and enjoy yourself. And of course, we've got Andy Russell, but before that, we're going to bring Bill up just one more time. Just to kind of give everybody a little idea, because on a beautiful day like this, it's such a blessing to have everybody together like this. It really is. Bill Tipton.
Just a little more history of this old canal. The state of Ohio spent $4.7 million. Now that don't sound like a huge amount of money to us today, but you got to remember this was 1822 when the legislation was passed, and then they started building the canal in 1825. 308 miles to get from Cleveland to Portsmouth. And we have to remember that this was all done with picks and shovels. Picks and shovels and horses and mules and them little wooden wheelbarrows that you see in the pictures over here. So what a feat. They not only built the canal, if I can find it here, there was a lot of other things that had to be built for the canal to work. The Ohio Erie Canal was 308 miles long. It had 146 canal locks. It had 56 guard locks. A guard lock is something that's built on a waterway to control the water, to either let more of the water into the canal or to keep water out. They had 14 aqueducts, like the big one that crossed out here at Soda Brush Creek. They had 153 stone culverts, 50 wood culverts, 6 feeder dams, 8 dams to cross streams, and 12 toll collectors' offices, all completed in 7 years with picks and shovels, a feat that would be hard to match even today. And remember, the destination was here, right here where we're sitting today. Isn't that amazing? This was the destination. Were the canals a success? Let me give you just a partial list of things that were hauled up and down this canal in 1850. there was 476,482 bushels of corn. There was 16,372 and a half bushels of wheat. There was 32,614 barrels of flour. There was 2,411 bushels of oats. Get this number. There was 5,246,572 pounds of pork and bacon in bulk pounds. There was 68,298 barrels of pork. And there was 2,847,000 pounds of other merchandise. Now this is just a partial list. This doesn't include the passengers and many other commodities that were transported up and down the canal. And it lasted for 80 years, so yes, I would say it was a success. That's about all I was going to share with you about the canal. But what I'd like to do now is to bring our Southern Ohio Erie Southern Descent Heritage Trail Director, Kathy Nelson, up to talk a little bit about the Southern Descent, exactly what that means, and I'd like for Kathy to also introduce the folks that she's brought with her. So Kathy, come on up. This folks, is the lady that made it happen. We wouldn't be here without her.
I don't know if I need to use this because I still have my school teacher voice, but I'll go ahead and use it. I just want to tell Bill that it's cooler in heaven. Remember that. How did we get here today? This all started in 2017 when a friend of mine and I were going to bring a bus tour down to see all the locks from Buckeye Lake to Portsmouth. When he asked me, or when he told me that's what he was going to do, my question to him was, well, do you know all about that? He said, a little, but that's where you come in. I really didn't like that answer. So where I came in was, we would do road trips. We had to find our way to all of these locks to do this bus tour that was coming up. So we started at Buckeye Lake. There are no more locks there, but that begins the Southern Descent. The Southern Descent that we're talking about and that we are celebrating is every time you got on the canal from Buckeye Lake to the Ohio River, you had to keep going, lowering down, down, down. And it's amazing how that worked. So it took us 5 times to come down, do this trip, so we would be ready for the bus tour. I found all the locks until I got here. And by the time I got here, it was dusk. And there were trees, tall, tall trees all over there. And I said, well, I know the lock is supposed to be there, but where is it? And there was just a little tiny bit of a stone shown through, and I realized that lock was there. So I don't know if Darren LeBrun is here. I know the former engineer, Clyde Willis is here. And I called ODOT first. ODOT told me to call the county engineer's office, and I think LeBron I think he was new at that time. And I burned up his phone, and he said, okay, Kathy, I'll send a crew over there and cut it all down, but you're gonna have to maintain it after that. Charity called me, and I could barely understand her. She was just thrilled. She said, they're cutting the stuff down, they're cutting the stuff down. And so the Scenic Southern Heritage Trail folks have been keeping it maintained. And I don't know what to say. I have met so many of you. I have been working with so many of you now. I have to give a shout out to Mayor Lance Westcamp from Groveport. He and Tom Byrne, who is the director of Parks and Facilities, They're here. They drove down from Groveport. And I have to give this shout out to Lance. Because if it wasn't for Lance, Groveport put up the seed money for us to get all of these locks on the National Register of Historic Places. Had it not been for that seed money, none of this would have happened. So I must say thank you from the bottom of my heart for you doing that. Once we got everything on the National Register, which was on April the 1st, 2019, we still had so much momentum to go. So I said, let's take all of what we've done and create a new heritage trail. So to read more about that trail, you can get on the new website from the Ohio Humanities called seohiofirst.org/trails. And I'm humbled by the hospitality that all of you have shown me when I've come here and all throughout this process. This has to be one of the biggest, most marvelous projects I've ever undertaken. Thank you very much.
There's so many people here that had a hand in making this a success. Does anybody, any of you, Kathy, Scott, Clyde, does anybody want to say a few words? The mic's yours if you do. Mr. Temple, was there anything that came to mind that you want to share with us about the old days? Wait a minute. Okay, Kathy, go ahead. Come on up.
This is a little story about a little girl. Well, this is a story about a little girl who was raised on Dry Run Road, 3 miles up a holler, and I lived on Coleman Road. Much later I found out that Coleman Road was named after the uncle of my husband. So I'm going back a little way. So anyway, I went to Dry Run School for 8 years, and I remember, I want to think it was about the 3rd grade, and back then, we were learning Ohio history in our classrooms, something we're not doing now. But I was always very interested in history, and so we were learning about the Erie Canal, and I came home that night, and back in the days, my mother didn't drive, which a lot of mothers didn't drive. They stayed home. They were stay-at-home moms. And so on Wednesday night, Dad got paid, and it was a big deal. We all got to get in the car and go down to Schaefer's, which is IGA, and do our grocery shopping. And so every time we'd come down, we'd take the turn right up here and pull in. Well, that particular day, after the history lesson at school, I was hanging over the seat telling my mom and dad, which mom was preparing her list. My brother was looking at baseball cards. My sister was primping in the back seat. And I was hanging over the front seat right in my dad's ear telling him about the Erie Canal. And I said, Dad, it's right there. It's right there. And so later in the week, our whole class had to write a paper about the Erie Canal. And so I went home and I was so excited because the person who had the best report got to stand in front of class and read it to everyone. And so I went home that night and I was telling my dad, and we were poor. We didn't have encyclopedias, but someone had come around to the door and sold Mother a set of Lincoln Libraries, and it was 2 volumes. They were this thick. And I think it was the whole encyclopedia condensed in these 2 books. And so Dad and I, we started looking it up, and my uncle had encyclopedias. He was the principal, and so I got together and put together a really great report about the Erie Canal. I went to school and we turned them in. Later in the week, I was called up front to read my report. So to me, and where I live now, my husband and I, we built a home in '85 on the hill behind IGA. So I look down on the Erie Canal every day. My husband, for all the years that we have lived there, has maintained and cut the grass there. And since my husband's passing, my son-in-law, we take care of that property like it's our own. So I'm very proud of my connection to the Erie Canal. But I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who made this event today possible. I want a special thanks to Kathy and your assistant there, your friend, Jane, and Mr. Tipton, and Larry, and all of you that taken part into preserving the history of the canal. So thank you very much.
Now, Bob, did you have something you want to say? Remember, folks, this is the guy who helped save this old canal. It probably wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him. So,
well, I can add some things to what has been said. I will say, first of all, I'm thrilled to see this happening. I've always, my wife and I, we traveled the state of Ohio. We even traveled this tier up the other end and followed it all the way down. And we looked at all the places that was open and went to different places around the country and even out of the country, and realized that we right here had one of the nicest historical, beautiful areas in the state of Ohio, and even in other states around. It was right here before us, and people would say that you went on vacation. Where'd you go? Went to the Smokies. Well, I saw it's beautiful in the Smokies. I said I can go out on the driveway of my house and see something just as pretty, if not prettier, than the Smokies. And we have it right here. It has been the dream. We moved over here on the west side and started the next tally in 1968. So we go back to 68. We moved up to this place right over here in about 97 or something like that. This building was built in 97. We built this, we bought this, and I can make one correction in your history of who owned the land. I owned that land over there and here for about 6 months. I bought it at a sheriff's sale, that property over there, and that company bought it 6 months later. So my name is on that deed too. But we praise the Lord for this, and thank the Lord for what is taking place. Because I told somebody the other day, you come over to the west side and you'll see the footprints of Bob and Lenore Temple. Mixed tally right there, this place right here, Victory Baptist Church, which is on the canal up there at the end. People used to visit our church from Texas and you know where. I say, you ever hear of the Ohio Erie Canal? Yes. I said, that ditch right there is it. And we were called on one time to make an observation of where we are. And I heard all those names, Nauvoo and all those. And we were to try to push our areas. My idea was of West Portsmouth, this is our front door. If your front door doesn't look nice, nobody will want to visit you. But if you fix this ditch up and make a front door of this area, then you've opened yourself up to visitors. And I just make one more comment. My suggestion back then was to change the name from West Portsmouth, because when we started out here, our restaurant back then, it was the worst side. If they talked about West Portsmouth, they talked about the worst side. We're the best side. And I said, it ought to change it to Nauvoo Village.
thanks, Bob. Thank you. Dan Frazee, you still here, Dan? Come on up. Dan Frazee is the Ohio Department of Transportation's real estate administrator here in District 9. Yeah. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources had control of the canal property here in Scioto County until 1986. And in 1986, the canal property was turned over to the Ohio Department of Transportation. When we got involved in this process and we got talking with the Ohio Department of Transportation, they said, you know, we're into highways and road repair, and we're really not into canals and those kind of things. They said, honestly, the canal property that isn't needed by the Ohio Department of Transportation, we'd like to turn it over to someone else. So that conversation has went back and forth now for a couple of years, and with Dan's help, probably here not in the distant future, probably in the very short future, this property right here is going to belong to Scioto County. It's going to belong to us, and that's terrific. So Dan, tell us a little something.
The Department of Transportation is interested in history, but again, it isn't really what we do. But we work with the commissioners, and we're getting very close to finalizing the paperwork. We have done surveys for both Lock 48 and Lock 50, and we have areas and legal descriptions and all that technical stuff. And we are going to be transferring that to the commissioners so that for use as basically a historical park. And when we were doing the survey work, we actually came across some old rusty thing here that's very significant. So we did it with in-house survey help. So this is on the ground, under leaves, was one of the original survey markers from the canal, our survey person. Now the end was kind of broken off, and you can see where it had writing on the top, but that's one of the old 1800s survey markers, and when they were grading or cutting down trees or something, it got disturbed and it was literally just laying on the ground. So I just brought that today for you folks to have. So.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? A lot of notary people, a lot of people's bound around this community a long time. Anybody want to share a story with us? The mic's yours.
Absolutely did not prepare these remarks. But I do want to share some of my recent research that does touch on the canal and the Underground Railroad. So, of course, Portsmouth was part of the Underground Railroad. It was a secret network, both white and African American, sometimes working together, sometimes working separately. So it was sort of operated on a need-to-know basis in many ways. But I've been researching a couple different runaway slaves from Kentucky who actually later in their life were interviewed and did leave an account of how they ultimately found a ride on the Underground Railroad here. And one of the stories involves a gentleman from Kentucky who was a slave who had a pass and was over here working on the canal, I think transporting some apples or fruit of some sort. And he tells that there was a gentleman on a canal boat who, while reaching down to help him on board, asked him if he had a family, and he said that he did not. And he said, "Well, would you like to escape? Would you like to escape to freedom?" And he said yes. And he said, "Well, be back here tomorrow morning early." Give him a time of some sort. And according to his telling, there was a wagon with horses that was brought down to the riverfront here at Portsmouth, and he escaped. So whoever it was that set up his escape was a canal boat captain operating here locally. And I have my theories on who that might be, but I'll keep that to myself for now before I can really ultimately prove it. But it is a true story. And the canal was definitely part of the Underground Railroad. So I'm thrilled what you guys have done. I mean, I think this is amazing work. I look forward to seeing what happens from here forward and doing what I can to help with the effort. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Clyde.